This way. Is that Prince for King? What's today's mathematics?
Truth is universal. Truth cannot be invented.
Then it was guaranteed that Marcus Garvey would come the next night. And the hall was packed with people. And everybody went with ammunition.
How they understand themselves as African, right, and American. Like, it's not either or, right?
Everybody who knows anything about Israel knows that in order to effectuate significant change, you not only need a majority, you need a Jewish majority.
America awards her killers, and they get ribbons and stripes and bars.
A U.S. State Department sponsored program and set of musical tours called the Jazz Ambassadors.
Talks about the work of Marcus Garvey and the work of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad as being demonstrative of, and he basically called them total nationalists.
But the reality is that African people are not vicious, violent people.
He's not teaching hate, he's teaching history.
Peace, peace, peace. Welcome to another episode of Wazadome TV. Today is a very, very special guest. We've been working on this one for a minute, and I'm happy to bring you Ife Thompson, who is a UK-based movement lawyer, criminal defense and human rights barrister, community organizer, and leading scholar activist on Black British English. Comrade, thank you for coming through. I really appreciate you taking the time all the way in the UK to come build with us here. So I guess we could start by telling me how you first took an interest in Black British English and Afro Creole languages, like as an intellectual endeavor, and like how did that like direct some of your course of study?
Yeah, well, hi everyone. It's really nice to be here, and I'm really excited to be in community with you all. It's interesting because my background is actually in law, so I studied law at university. But I've always been a Garveyite, a community organizer, and someone who deeply cares about Black liberation. And I guess even to an extent in my own practice, like there was elements of me being slightly more radical in like how I saw Black languages. I remember like I'd get really offended when people would say like, oh, you know, this language is a dialect or spoken English. And I'd be like, no, and that was even in school. I remember when I was in secondary school, actually, which is like our age 14 and 15. Like I remember being in our ICT classes and researching the links between Jamaican Patois and Sierra Leonean Creole, and say there was a link there, and speaking to my friend from Sierra Leone and my friend that was Jamaican and talking about the links there and having discussions about that. And I guess there's sometimes our inner self knows what our future's going to be doing.
Yeah.
And I don't see that removed from my reality as becoming someone who's very well versed and actually quite loves Black language practices. I see some of those conversations having as a younger Black person is key to that, like being, I guess, the stomping ground to activating this work. But I think what really pushed me is doing community organizing work. So as a community-based organizer, I was doing a lot of projects in schools with my not-for-profit called BLAM UK, which stands for Black Learning Achievement Mental Health. We just turned 9 this year.
Congrats.
And thank you. And I remember when I first went into the schools, so the schools in South London, where I'm from, where I grew up, which is a majority Black area and has a rich history of Black working class communities, particularly from the Caribbean, also West Africa as well. So growing up in those communities and actually going to the schools where I used to like see school kids and my own school as well. I went back to that school to do some of the projects that BLAM does on Black history. I remember the young people would say to me like, oh, Miss, that's cool. Or Miss, like, that's lit. And they're basically speaking how me and my friends speak. And I thought to myself, these children are aged 8, 9, and 10, and they're extremely fluent in what I call Black British English. And I thought, how could I make these sessions affirmative to their language practices as Black British children, and also bring in their Creole language practices like Jamaican Patois, Nigerian Pidgin, and bring that into the space. And I think them speaking to me that way ignited something for me, and I wanted to start making lessons that were affirmative to them. And I had remembered, like, around that time as well, I had gotten into the work of a Kenyan writer who wrote Devil on the Cross. And what he would do, which I found really amazing, is that he would write all his books in Kikuyu, which is a Kenyan language, and then translate it to English. And he said that was an intellectual challenge to push the dominance of English. And he used to say, like, you cannot only write African literature in European languages.
Right.
And I think reading his work, incorporating his work into our sessions. Also, I went to a session by Caribbean Links, which introduced me to an amazing linguist called Professor Hubert Devonish, who is a Pan-Africanist, Guyanese linguist who does a lot of work looking at African linguistic retention in the Caribbean, and also how the movement of the diaspora from Africa to the Caribbean, and also from the Caribbean back to Africa, has influenced language practice for Black people globally. So I think his work gave me the tools to understand, like, these are languages, they're not broken English, like, these are not even dialects, they're full-on languages, and they're actually a continuum of African linguistic resistance, and also continuing that indigenous knowledge practice of, like, creating languages. So I think those schools of thoughts pushed me, but I think, like, my greatest catalyst in bringing that work into the wider community and actually engaging in it as a site of struggle was definitely the young people that I was working with.
Yeah.
And then from once that door was open, I started to read more linguistic literature. There's one person I have to always credit, and I always, like, as probably one of the most influential linguists on my work and on me as a linguistic activist and linguist myself, is the work of April Baker Bell. I have a book here. I actually want to just even show you guys.
Yeah. You know, we love the books here. Yeah.
So important. So this book,
Oh wow.
called Linguistic
Linguistic
Justice,
justice. Okay.
and it's not a thick book. It's a very thin book. It's written by an African American linguist called April Baker Bell, and she's come up with the concept of anti-Black linguistic racism, and she really challenges the ideas around, like, Black language practices not being whole languages, but also, like, how the school systems and society places language hierarchies that are false, actually, in place, and actually somewhat false Black children and Black people to internalize very problematic ideas about their language, which in turn makes them internalize problematic ideas about themselves, because Black language is tied to Black people. So she makes a very strong argument about that. She also makes arguments around how, like, Black language practices are very, like, it's a commodity. Like, there's loads of businesses that will say, you know, laying in your lane, or it's on fleek, or things like, you know, it's given. I just saw recently on TikTok, actually, there's a whole white man who has made a drink called It's Giving, right? And that is AAVE, you know, and that comes out of the ballroom culture, and it comes out of Black women, and then pushing that word. And then we're seeing now a white man's come in and made a whole canned drink and selling it actually in quite a lot of stores. Is this co-option of Black language? So she gave me a lot of language ideas, and I think if you're anyone that's interested in getting into Black language practices and needed a strong basis to understand what's really going on at Wagwan, you need to get this book. Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, that's deep, because we see all the time on social media, whoever running these social media accounts for these big corporations, they always incorporate our slang, right? And always, like, I know you see it. One thing, and you kind of mentioned about that in that book, about how Black languages, you know, Black British English, AAVE, they look at these as not real languages and just like broken aspects of you know, the dominant language. And it's so funny because I've, you know, read several studies, like with AAVE in particular, where they did these studies where the young students, they when they would, I guess, be shown a sentence or that had a question. One, it was phrased in just, I guess, what you would consider like, I hate to use the term regular English, but you know, the dominant way English is spoken, and then AAVE, and they understood both. But the white kids did not understand both. They only understood
They were
English.
not bilingual. They're not bilingual.
Right, exactly. And so, Black British English. How would you define Black British English? And can you talk about its significance, given that, you know, Black people are what, maybe 4% of the UK's population, but still has such a profound impact on British and global culture? I mean, we can see that with shows like Top Boy, the music. You know what I'm saying? So can you get into that some?
Even Supercell, I was seeing, I
Yeah.
think Gabriel Union tweeted about it. Like, yeah, like we global too.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
we hold on. We hold on. So yeah, it's interesting because one of the things that often comes up in my work is that the language, which is Black British English, is often referred to as UK slang. And I have a big issue, and Ife Bell taught me this, and a lot of other Black linguists and Caribbean linguists have also said, like, our languages are not slangs. They're not broken English, they're not informal ways of speaking, they are full and whole languages. And I think one of my biggest, like, pushbacks when I'm doing this work is like, oh, isn't that the slang? Isn't that the slang? And it's just this inability to I would say also, like, remove ourselves from a lot of these, like, colonial and Eurocentric ideas around the world, but also like how we also move through the world. Because I don't see why, if we're saying this is a language that has influence from other languages, why we as language speakers don't have autonomy to call our languages what means something that is significant to us language speakers. Like, why don't we the language speakers have the right to rename our language? I think part of my work was to say, actually, like, we're the language speakers and we have the right to define our language on our terms. And that's also part of the liberation struggle, is like being able to name things and actually being able to rewrite the records that have been wrongly put in place as the standard and what is the truth, because it's a battle for truth often as well, right?
Yeah.
So it's writing that idea that the way that we speak in the language that we have fought so hard to create is informal, is slang. And also what happens when you start calling these languages informal, slang, or broken English? You're actually taking part in a very violent erasure of history. I think all too often Black heritage and history is erased, is not seen, and is really used to support ideas of inferiority against us as a people. And I think one of the ways in which we can actively resist that is through taking part in language justice work and actually renaming and reclaiming things on our own terms. So yes, with Black British English, the history of it, and I there's one point I actually want to say before I even go into the history of this, but I'm actually writing the first book on Black British English at the moment.
Can't wait. So you know you got to come back whenever the book comes out, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm writing that book. It's been almost 3 years in the making. It's a lot of research and a lot of rethinking and recalibrating ideas, and really like spending a lot of time on these concepts. And one of the things that has really come to mind, and things that I've been thinking about in particular, is this idea of like the way Black people are just so brilliant in creating languages. Like that is something that I see in my own research, but also as a language speaker that we specialize in. Like, whatever environment we are in, we are creating new languages.
Absolutely.
And I think that isn't removed from our realities as African people, because when you look at on the continent, like, let me give an example of Nigeria, where I'm from. Nigeria is obviously a colonial concept, but within the region that is classed as Nigeria, there's 500 languages in that region. 500 languages.
Wow.
And what you will often have is many people are multilingual.
Yeah.
So some people can speak about 5 languages. I went to Abuja last year and I met an elder, and she would switch between Yoruba, Edo, Igbo, and Pidgin fluently, depending on who she's speaking to. You know what I mean? And when I was looking more into like how multilingual Africans are, many African people will know at least 5 languages.
Right.
Because they're living in communities where there isn't many languages spoken around them. So in order for them to move fluently in society, they have to be multilingual. So I think if we come from a community that one has a lot of languages within it, and the people in of themselves are very multilingual. Even if you've stolen African peoples and taken them to the Atlantic and taken them to the Americas and to the Caribbean, they will still retain that gifted language creation practice within them.
Right.
So that's one thing I would say.
Right.
Another thing that I would say is obviously our languages, we're very oral people. So a lot of our history, our language learning, it's not done through writing, it's literally done through what we hear. And I think as someone that's learning Yoruba myself a lot, the way that I'm even learning it better is through correction, and there's different tones. So that the idea of listening and creating and constantly like updating our minds and our like repository of like ideas through orality is very important to Black people, which is why I think what is often so easy for us to create languages, because we're coming from a background of people who it's natural for them to create languages not needing to like write things. Like most people, like most European people that create new languages, they're gonna have to study and think, okay, what's going to come together.
Right.
But for us, we've done it quite naturally, and I think Black British English is a reflection of that, like the ease that we have in like language creation. And so what you have in the UK is you had the British generation that came post 1945 after the World War. Many of the people that came were from Jamaica, and what we had is obviously they were coming from a British colony, because then they were still colonized by the British, who invited them over and was saying like, you know, come here, it's going to be better for you, you can make more money. And what you see here is they then brought their language practices, so Jamaican Patois in particular, but there's also other Jamaican Creoles that came, other Caribbean Creoles that came into the UK from this migration. And what you will find is that often the Jamaican language was the more dominant Creole in the UK. So that meant that even other people that were not Jamaican language speakers, they would still end up picking up Jamaican words that could be for the music, but also just the dominance of the Jamaican culture meant that other Caribbean Creoles were not spoken as much. So then the main base of the language became Jamaican Creole. And I had a friend who I spoke to whose parents are from Dominica. They speak a French-based Creole. And I asked him, like, you know, when your parents came over to the UK, were they speaking, you know, a creolized form of Dominican Creole? And he said no, because the dominant language was Jamaican Patois, and through the songs, through reggae, through all of that, so they were picking up on Jamaican Patois. So that became the language of the Black British community then, and then that became what I would say the Black British like focal, like building language, what we call lexified language, which is the key base language to what is now Black British English that we speak now. So looking at the base of it, and what I'll also say as well is that many of the I don't like to say English based, but what is often referred to as English based Caribbean Creoles, they have a lot of language sharing that's gone on between them. You had which is, we don't often learn this, but a lot of people always think that, you know, people taken from Africa and taken to, like, let's say Jamaica or to Barbados, and it's just stayed there. But actually that's not what was happening.
Right.
What you had is you had movement of different African peoples with a planter class. So what you'd have is, like, even in Suriname, which is where they speak Saratonga, which is an English-based Creole, despite them being now a Dutch colony and they speak Dutch. Surinamese people were taken when the British, when the British lost Suriname, and the Dutch decided to go to Jamaica. They took a lot of Surinamese people, and then because of that, you have, if you listen to Cromanti, which is a creolized language spoken by the Jamaican Maroons, you will hear a lot of ideas and words and concepts from Surinamese Creole in that language. So there's a lot of movement. So what you have, and even in Barbados, again, there was a lot of movement of enslaved people. So the language practices around the Caribbean have been a movement of people. Like even what is now in spoken Creolese in modern day Guyana is actually a direct influence from the British bringing a lot more Bayesian enslaved people to Guyana. And then that changed the language practices, or more Bayesian to Guyana, and that changed language practices. And Creolese is very much influenced by Bayesian people. So what I'm saying is that there's been a lot of movements around with the Creoles, even the English-based Creoles. So that makes it a lot easier for language learning because there are some foundational similarities between the Creoles.
Yeah.
So when you come to somewhere like the UK, a Bayesian speaker may be able to understand and engage with Jamaican Patois because there's some language similarities within there. So, but what you have had is because Jamaican Patois became the base Creole language, other Caribbean Creoles that would have been around at the time haven't had as much influence within mainstream like British English. That's not to say that within like Bayesian communities or descendants of Bayesian communities in the UK, they don't speak a more Bayesian version of Black British English.
Yeah.
So I also think within groups there are, more specific varieties of Black British English that can be drawn upon based on the language speaker's own linguistic repository. But that doesn't take away from the fact that the mainstream version of Black British English, the base of it is Jamaican Patois.
Absolutely.
And that's something that happened over a number of generations. And you'll see, obviously, with lovers rock and with reggae and all of these music genres that are spoken in Jamaican Patois all have a lot of Jamaican Patois words in them. It helped with the pushing of Jamaican language as a global Afro Creole and a Creole spoken by many people that may not even be of Jamaican descent. They understand Jamaican Creole or can identify it because of the music. And then you had a similar sort of language growth in terms of the base and the spread of Jamaican Patois as the foundational language of Black British English. And then what you then see alongside with the different migration waves is that when you had a lot more West African migration, particularly around the 90s and late 80s, the language practices have then changed. And what we're seeing is that now there's a lot more influence from that Nigerian pidgin. And also you've had a lot of Somali communities that have now come as well. So we're seeing a lot more influence of Arabic, Black British English, but again, directly from the Black Somali community. So what we're seeing again is a language creation and practices and like Nigerian pidgin and Jamaican Patois from the same language family. And actually, there's a whole study of work that Professor Hubert Devishnish talks about where the influence of like, Sierra Creole and Sierra Creole via like Nigerian pidgin is from the forced displacement and I don't like to say the word deportation because I don't think that's the best term, but I guess the forced movement of African peoples back to the continent when you had the Trinidad uprisings, when the Jamaican Maroons had lost the battle against the British, and then they were taken to Sierra Leone, and then they brought their language practices back to Africa and influenced the region again. So I think it's particularly important to understand that they are from the same language families, and that means that when you have children of not the thumbs up. You've got children. You've got children whose parents are fluent in Nigerian pidgin. They're now hearing Jamaican Patois. It's easier for them to understand some of the language practices because of the similarities and there's a strong influence.
No. Okay.
There's a strong influence directly from America, and again, from African American Black English, not just America, but I'm saying that because of the music, because of the TV shows, we're able to pick up and hear AAVE, and again, AAVE, the struggle and the Black resistance linguicide created African American Black English is created in the same conditions that Jamaican Patois created in this forced linguicide of African languages. So again, you have similar language attention practices, like the way that all Afro Creole languages, they don't say the word the. TH doesn't exist in most African languages, but the word the does. So what they've done, they've used the base language and removed the th and put the de. And I did a post about that on my page, Black English podcast. It got over 126 views, like so many, like over 10,000 likes, because people were really interested to see the way in which African language practices have been retained in the Caribbean and in the Americas. So again, hearing AAVE words and seeing the language practices of AAVE coming from a similar language family, it makes it more easier for it to be picked up and infused within Black English because of language practices. that Black people are really taking part in their base languages, their base Afro Creole languages. I always say it's easier for the languages to evolve and to incorporate other words because of the language families coming from it, also because of that history of Black people enjoying making languages and language creation in community. And I think one of the ways that we are showing our Pan-African solidarity is actually saying that the way that we speak is valid. Because I think by taking words from AAVE and incorporating into Black English, actually we're saying that it's a valid language, we like this, we're going to use it. It speaks to an experience that we understand as Black people as well. So I think there's something quite affirming, I think, as Black people taking part in each other's Black language practices and validating those language practices, and also like honouring the history as well. And I think that's why for me it's actually quite problematic when you call this language UK slang, because actually you're taking part in an erasure of that rich language history, and also you are renaming something that is specific to Black language creativity. Like Black people created that. Like there's a Drake meme, look around here, this wouldn't be here if not for us, right? So I think with that erasure with the term UK slang and broken English, that's why I really reject it in my work. So yeah, I think that the base, and that's what my research goes into, the base of Black richness is almost a Black Atlantic experience, but also very much reflective of the migration that's happened at the heart of empire. And the reason why a lot of our families have been forced to come to the UK is because of the violence and the displacement that we face because of capitalism and colonization and imperialism that has made our places almost inhabitable, or has made it so the only way that we can really survive is coming to the UK or flee to the UK to make better living and make it, and to be able to survive. So a lot of our families made the journeys against all odds, and I think the language practices is a deep reflection of that migration story. And yeah.
No, I really, first off, I can't wait to read the book whenever it comes out. I can't wait. Such a fascinating subject. And I love the framing, obviously, too, because when we look at these Afro Creole religions, whether they're in the Caribbean, AAVE, Black British English, it's a reflection of our Pan-Africanism, right? Like it's there's even a lot of cultural linguistic exchange in hip hop between, UK artists and artists in America, and it's bi-directional. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, I'm not a fan, but as you can see, uh, Drake in Toronto is really influenced a lot by Black British English and artists out there. And so it's having its impact on the entire world, right? And I think that's just amazing. And again, I love the framing because I feel like we should continue to frame it like that, because it is evidence of our Pan-Africanism, right? One thing, one thing here, and I'm pretty sure there as well, like when it comes to Afro Creole languages, like they're often like devalued in formal spaces. And Black people have this internal mechanism where they feel like they need to code switch whenever they're like, I guess if they're looking for a job, or if they're going to court, or if they're doing, something that involves um Europeans in a mode of authority, right? And so when it comes to just that idea, like, what do you think about the fact that our languages are viewed in a way that in mainstream society, a lot of us feel or have been taught that we must code switch, because if I speak AAVE, if I speak Black British English, I won't be taken as serious, or I'll be looked at as less intelligent.
Yeah, I think there's two forms of harm that's come out of that school of thought that has really affected Black people's linguistic esteem, and also their self-esteem as well. You can also say racial esteem, all of these things. And I think one thing that comes to mind is the story that I had from one of the young people that we was teaching Black history at school, and she went to a school in South London, in Brixton, which is a predominantly Black area. which has a rich Caribbean history, particularly from the Winter generation and migration that happened there. So it's a very rich Black working class area. And despite that history, she was in the classroom and said Wagwan to her teacher. And Wagwan is obviously a greeting term in Jamaican Patois, and it's also been incorporated used in Black English as well. And the first thing that child had to be subject to was being sent out the classroom.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the violence that we're seeing Black children having to go through.
Wow.
And what was particularly interesting to me, and I always say this, is that if that child had said bonjour, had said hola, they would say, oh, this is multilingualism. Oh, they're taking, speaking European languages. That's great. But the moment that you bring a Black language into that space, you bring an Afro Creole into that space, you are instantly shut down and told that this is wrong.
Right.
And you must leave this space. Yeah, you have done something wrong and you must leave the space immediately.
Right.
It doesn't matter that you're in a Black community. It doesn't matter that your school is majority Black. In this space, whiteness is what is being upheld, but languages are what's being upheld. And I think that rings true to a lot of patterns. It's the punishment that Black people go through at white institutions that makes them scared. But I think not only scared, but also like it affects their racial esteem. It has traumatic effects on them, And I often think about the ways that we are trying to survive in white supremacy and on the system of white supremacy. We often will code switch. But one thing that Ife Bell talks about in her book that I love a lot is giving Black children and Black people the tools to make political language choices. Because I think none of these things happen in a vacuum. And being able to teach people about language discrimination, linguistic hierarchy, gives you the language to call it out. Same way we have the language to call out anti-Blackness now. It was through community organizing and work that we got the language to call it out. We got the language to call it out, got the tools to call it out, and collectively have been calling it out. So I think the same sort of education needs to go into language discrimination, because what that child went through was a form of language discrimination.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah, but unless you have the tools, the know-how, and actually been given the education, the political education to call it out, you may just absorb that, and they may not speak Black English or another Afro Creole again. We try to work against that and actually say that we can assert our right to speak our languages in these spaces. And one thing that Ife talks about is giving you the political tools to make language choices that are freeing. So you may not speak Black English in a workspace because they may not be fluent.
Yeah.
And see that actually you lack the fluency for me to speak my language with you. That's the reason why I'm not speaking it. Political. Or you can make a political choice and say, actually, I think this workplace should be more inclusive. I heard other workers speaking Spanish. I heard other workers speaking, another European-based language, and that's not frowned upon. So then I too have the right to speak my Afro Creole in the workspace too.
Absolutely.
And having that know-how and saying that actually it's a language. And I've pulled up white people that have come to me and they said the word bruv. I said, is that how you speak when you're with your friends? They'll be saying bruv to me when you see me, because
I hate it. I hate it too, because they do that with AAV as well. Like don't do that. It's so condescending. I don't like it.
It's condescending.
Yeah.
And I know you will not be in the room defending Black language practices when I'm not there.
Yeah.
So, and I've done no work to defend Black language practices either, but you're taking part in it because it represents social coolness. And that's a whole nother.
Yeah, that's real though. It does. And that's why.
Yeah. So that's a whole nother theory to go down. But what I really am saying is, like, I think that people need to be given the political tools about our language to be able to call out violence of language erasure, because Black British English and all other Afro Creoles have the right to be spoken in the language workspace and or in any formal space, and there's a really beautiful language declaration that was done in 1996. It's called the Universal Linguistic Declaration, and it talks about every language community having the right to have their language used and accepted and protected in formal spaces. And I think there's often a willful erasure, because not just the erasure of like Black languages, but I think that the way we understand linguistics and understand language in the world, especially in the Western world, is very poor. And it's done I believe intentionally. Often the only time that you can learn linguistics is if you go to university. It's
Yeah.
not taught in schools, it's not taught at college, it's not taught in any formative spaces of education, and it should be. But I think it's not done that way because they want standardized English to be the main way that we communicate with each other, and they also want that to be seen as a superior language. So they will not teach you any linguistic scientific facts around the idea that, you know, every single language created by people is of the same value. As long as you can use it to communicate with somebody and the language speakers accept that it's a valid language, it's not a dialect, it's not broken English, not broken anything. And that's a linguistic fact. But that's not taught in the school space. And the ideas around language hierarchy and the idea of standardized language, which is really kind of brought in to help capitalism and help maintain status quo, that isn't spoken about because the system would rather it be that we have an imperialist approach. The way that language spread, particularly English, it spread because it was a language of colonial dominance and imperialism. And that is spoken about, right? So like the idea that language being the Queen's English and you're more intellectual are not based on any linguistic facts,
Right.
because language is for communication. And any language that allows you to do that is as valid as the other language.
That's a great point. Language is for communication, and any language that is able to do that is valid. Wow. That's
it's
real.
valid.
Yeah.
That's real. And I think once we start having the radical education around language, then we change our worldviews, which is why I think this book was so vital for me, understanding my language, also how I could work towards creating a world that's more linguistically just. And so I think we need to, and from a young age, which is why, you know, in a book that my not-for-profit created, which is Even Here, Global Narrative for the Classroom, the whole section, and we've got a section on the Americas and also in Europe as well, and the Caribbean. There's sections just on Caribbean Creoles, on also African American vernacular English, and also Black English, because we really believe the importance of, from a young age, giving young people the tools to navigate these very hostile anti-Black language systems that are in place in society. So I think, like I don't encourage the word code switching. What I encourage is the idea of, I don't believe, because I think that code switching will not ultimately save you, because what the root of the
And plus,
problem
I
is
can't keep it up that long.
I can't keep it up either. And I also see a lot of my white colleagues that are white working class. They will come to space and they will speak, you know, what we call, which is a language spoken by those from Essex, white working class from Essex. And they will speak Cockney, and also Cockney's also got roots in East London. But they will speak that language, and they'll speak it with their chest. And they will not stutter. And no one is looking down at them, and they're happy speaking that. And I find it interesting because when Black people code switch sometimes, they will code switch to an Essex accent, which kind of shows power of whiteness, because it's not necessarily the accent, but the whiteness attached to it. It's not necessarily the class person, but the whiteness attached to the accent that gives it legitimacy. And the idea is that if you have proximity to whiteness, then therefore you will be seen as better in society. Society will take you more seriously. And I'm not saying that people that speak with an accent don't experience discrimination, because they do as well. They do experience class discrimination, but I think it's also important to acknowledge that within the class discrimination, there's also a racialized element of it that enables whiteness, no matter where it is on the hierarchy, proximity to whiteness for Black people to always be a step up. And I think, which is why I fight even harder the ideas that we have about language supremacy, because, you know, a lot of the times it's rooted in class and racialized discrimination, and we've internalized it. And a more freeing way of looking at it is, again, like, there are some professions that actually require you to be fluent in Black language practices.
Wow.
If you are an A&R manager looking at talent, and most of the songs spoken and created by Black language speakers are in Black languages, you need to be fluent in Black language practices in order to do well. A lot of people that are doing reviews on Black languages that are so Black songs that have gone viral, they often have to be fluent in Black language practices. Even me as a lawyer, you know, I'm doing criminal defense work, but a lot of my clients are Black people, because we know how racist and violent the system is towards Black people, policing, arrest, you name it. I'm speaking to a convert, but we know how that would mean that more Black people are coming before the courts. And for me, being able to speak to my client in Black English is vital for me to be able to communicate with them, and to be able to also look at some of the evidence provided by the Crown and saying this is not how we speak as Black British English speakers. That's the wrong translation given there. So I see, even as a lawyer, I think it's been vital for my practice that I'm fluent in Black British English.
Yeah.
So this idea is that Black British English is not valid in formal spaces. That's actually a complete lie.
Right.
It's a complete lie.
Right.
And I think we have to be undoing that. And I think there's even some research that came out of America about the Trayvon Martin trial. And actually, one of the problems the jurors had is that they weren't fluent in British English, and they didn't create a space where there wasn't a interpreter that could speak AAVE. Sorry.
Wow.
I think did I say AAVE or British English?
Yeah, you said, but you corrected. It's fine. It's fine.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
They did not have AAVE interpreters in the courtroom.
Wow.
And a lot of linguists have said that they believe that that's actually affected the trial outcome.
Wow, I'm pretty sure that has affected a lot of trial outcomes, right? And just some of the inherent biases that jurors might have, even just for speaking it.
Yes, and also the fact that Black language speakers experience anti-Black linguistic racism means that their accents are judged and the language they're spoken is also judged negatively as well. So, and the courtroom space did not acknowledge that, did not, do any sort of that myth busting around language practices that have been demonized, like Black British English, so, and AAVE. So, and again, if you were someone that's fluent in AAVE, we need interpreters in AAVE in court cases to interpret, the wrong narratives being placed on Black languages. Same in the UK. So there's formal spaces where language practices like AAVE, Black British English, Jamaican Patois are needed. And I think the more that we look at it as a language, the more that we see the opportunities for our language practices to be honoured. And one thing that they talk about, and that I struggle with a lot in the UK, is there are basically no leading Black linguists. And there is a Black linguist on looking at Black language practices. So what Black British English is often called in this country is multicultural London English, which is a term created by a white linguist in 2007.
Right.
And people have been running with it, saying MLE. And I said to them, listen, that no one goes around saying I'm a multicultural person.
Right.
No one does that.
Right.
It doesn't even make any sense. And I just think, why is it that because other racial groups are taking part in Black language practices, we should not erase Black people's linguistic creation, and in particular Caribbean contribution to language creation? It's wrong.
It's very wrong. It's erasure. Yeah.
It's erasure. And I think that I think that we have to spend a lot of time being very intentional about how we view our languages, what we do to undo the linguistic violence that we've experienced as Black language speakers, and then how we actively become linguistic justice activists for our languages as well.
Yeah.
Because I always the free Black people are not going to speak in English.
Right.
No way.
When I was young, in high school, I worked in a kitchen. And there was a brother from Jamaica that was in the kitchen with me, and there was a sister from Haiti that was in the kitchen with me. And I would be speaking AAVE. She would be speaking like a Haitian Creole. He's Jamaican Patois. But we communicated with each other, and the white people was like, I don't know what none of y'all are talking about. And to think that, and I'm saying that I brought that up because I feel like there's a revolutionary aspect to Black languages, Afro Creole languages, because if I can speak to you in front of Europeans and they don't know what we're talking about,
there we go.
You know what I'm saying? I feel like that's a very valuable tool. You mentioned something too that if you could just explain what this is and what the concept is, linguicide.
Linguicide is the intentional erasure, and often for it's a genocide of language. Basically, it's intentional erasure of language practices of a particular people. And I always say that the trafficking and enslavement of Black people was the world's longest and greatest in terms of size and amount of languages that were subject to it. It went on for 500 years. The amount of languages that was targeted across West Africa and Central Africa was vast in number. The means that Europeans took to take part in that violent erasure, they were putting, gags on Black people's mouths that were taken to the Americas and to the Caribbean. They were also, having violent beatings if you're caught speaking your language, because they know that if you're speaking your language, that you can, plan an erection plan a revolution, plan an uprising. So they knew that, and they did all they can to really wipe the African tongue, which is why I find Afro Creole language so beautiful, because they sit at the junction of resistance to that environment where they were placed with a number of different languages that they may or they may not have understood. Because I think sometimes when we say this, they would have all not understood each other, I think we kind of erase the fact that there was a lot of Africans that were very multilingual.
Yeah, right.
So I don't like to say like they wouldn't understand each other, because they could have understood each other. They could have. But either way, if they were caught speaking the language, they would, same if they're caught practicing the languages, they will be subject to enormous amounts of violence from the colonial planter class, from the enslavers. So I think that the resistance of being able to create Afro Creoles is a real beautiful legacy. And not only did they create Afro Creoles, which kept the language structures that are familiar to African languages and grammar rules, they also kept African words, which I think is just so beautiful, seeing those words spoken and used in African.
Me too.
Still, and also seeing how that is also brought back by a Creole, Southern Creole and Liberian colloquia. So seeing that exchange of the language retention of words as well is just beautiful. Seeing it, on the continent and in the Caribbean, it's a beautiful resistance struggle. So I think that we need to start calling it the world's longest linguicide. And saying how intentional Europeans were about eradicating the African tongue. But they knew what that would do for our movements and our connection as a people, to have our tongue eradicated, which is why I also say that we should spend a lot of time learning other African languages. I spend a lot of time learning Haitian Creole. It's also Duolingo. We have no excuse. We should be becoming more multilingual and going back to ancestral roots as Black people and becoming more multilingual in terms of language learning and being more equipped in different African languages, because we're also entering different worldviews of how our ancestors were viewing the world. So one thing that I was saying the other day is like this idea, and I don't have to focus on whiteness too much. I'm looking at an example because it's a good example, but I don't want to only focus on whiteness. But the term in Swahili for white people is Mzungu, and I use that on code because sometimes people are knowing what other terms. I don't want to start baiting up the thing. I don't want to start exposing the thing, but some white people clocked on when we're talking about them in other African languages. They know the words now. So I've been expanding my language depository and including other words to call white people that are from African languages. So that way, as soon as you update it, I'm updating my.
Yeah.
So you don't know what custom or whatever. So or critiquing you. So I thought that the word Mzungu just simply meant like the color white, the same way we have the word black, you have the word white. But actually, Mzungu means person that wanders around aimlessly.
Wow.
And that's because when white people came to come and steal the land, they were obviously looking and trying to, measure, and they're wandering around aimlessly, trying to teeth the land and measuring up and trying to, sight out the land and see what they can take. That's why the ancestors called them that.
Right.
So, and then another African group, I can't remember the name, but they said that the transition for whiteness for them is the deceiver, because they came into the land, deceived them, stole the land, and did so much wicked things to them. And I also saw recently, I went to the Yoruba Museum, that they had, this is in Lagos, they had a depiction of a British colonialist that was going to go to this very racist exhibition they had in the UK in Wembley, I believe, which was, I think it was called the African Village exhibition, where they meant to showcase Africans and African people in a very derogatory manner for people that were in the UK that wanted to see what Africa was like. And they commissioned, or I don't know if they forced, I don't know what the particular background was, because it could have been a violent commissioning or commissioning of this Yoruba artifact. Well, an artifact, because Yoruba people are quite skilled in making Yoruba-based art. And what they had done is they had drawn a European person, I think, on a horse, and with the European classic colonial outfit with that funky hat and the shorts. So they carved that hat into the white person's caricature or statue. I don't know if it's statue, but the art piece. And on top of the horse, they put a Yoruba deity called Eshu. And Eshu is the trickster god, is the god. Some people say can bring misfortune as well, but it's a trickster god, and it's not often seen as positive in Europe really as well, but it's a crossroad. It's a deity that represents that, and I found it very interesting that basically the word that they had used to describe the British, and I don't think unbeknownst to them, was that you are a trickster.
Wow.
So I'm even finding to myself, like, is it that our Euro ancestors were calling them Eshu because of the misfortune and the wickedness they brought to them as well, and the trickery that they did to steal the land and steal the people in the land too? It made me kind of question a bit more, like, are we even naming them the right word? But the current I think in Yoruba should actually be called Eshu instead. It's interesting.
Very.
Yeah, so like I think by taking part in African language practice, we actually have more expansive ways of describing our experiences and our worldviews that English doesn't have the reach, doesn't have the range.
That's another wonderful point, because there are just some concepts, African concepts, that you just can't translate into English, you know?
Yes.
I have a friend who is in a Sufi order in Senegal, and
yes.
he learned Wolof, and
Yes.
he talks about how he learned, and so, you know, with him being Sufi, he learned Wolof before he learned Arabic, right? Because they said that was more, you know, when he was talking to the elders down there, he's like, learn Wolof first, right? So he learned Wolof, and he said, like, that's when he felt like he was able to really, really have an African worldview whenever he spoke an African language. Because I guess sometimes we don't realize how much language shapes our own thoughts. You know what I mean? But even at the same time, I think our Afro Creole languages do their best in kind of synthesizing those, like, African concepts, even though we're still, you know, using a different form of English. Like, we're able to encapsulate more in the way we speak, like Black British English, AAVE, Jamaican Patois, than just a quote unquote standard version of English could. You know, it's like there's certain, like in certain African languages, you know, how they'll I've read, and I'm not a linguist, but I've read, like, you know, there's you know, meaning with, like, saying a word twice, man,
Yes,
like, I
I
heard dude
can
is
come back to
crazy.
you on that.
Nah, he's crazy. Like,
Yes,
that says everything, right? Like, that's so African. You know what I'm saying?
yeah. I just want to even jump in on that point because, like, I'm fluent in Yoruba, right? And like in Yoruba, the language has a lot of repetition. So in order to emphasize things, you would repeat it. So like, if you want to say "come quickly," you say "come nisin sin." No, sorry. If you want to say "come now," you say "nisin sin." Or if you want to say like "come like quickly," you'd say "kya kya," which is like quickly.
Right.
Or like, if you want to say it slowly, you say dear, like, which is double. But if you say mashe dear with slow but very slowly, is dear. It's like almost like so much Yoruba words is reduplication. Like when I went to Jamaica, and I was thinking, oh, you know what? And I obviously, as a Black English speaker, you hear a lot of Jamaican words, and you'd be like, oh, my good friend, or like digga fish. So I'm seeing again the emphasis going on there, and I can see in AAVE, oh, you early. Like,
Right,
I'm seeing
exactly.
all of this going, and I'm like, oh, where? Like, how come? And then even when you like see like Nigerian pidgin, again, it will also have you know, luku, like if you're really looking luku,
Yeah.
or if you walked a far journey, waka, like you're just going all around the place, waka. So it's like you're seeing that repetition, and I'm like, why is it black people everywhere? We're
Yeah.
repeating stuff.
Yeah.
That's just how we have retained African worldviews and grammar rules in the languages that we're speaking. So I think that's a very beautiful way of resisting. I think again, because we are an oral people, it was very easy to do. Because
Right.
the way that we transmit knowledge, the way that we transmit history, and language creation is always done in orality. So even if the Europeans thought, okay, if they stop talking the language, that takes it away. But because we're an oral people, it's very natural for us to create and restore memory and to import things orally and to
Yeah.
do things orally. So that is the resistance is mapped and coded in the languages that we speak, which I think is a beautiful ode to keep speaking these languages, because we're actually taking part in the ways that ancestors actually really put up a fight to ensure that the African worldview was going to still be preserved in how we speak.
What do you think about the idea that a lot of mainstream European scholars and academics, both in Europe and in America, how they like to diminish the value of oral tradition as if it's somewhat less than traditional writing systems? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's just the imposition of Western worldviews, and
Hmm.
also I think coupled with racism as well, because I think that the Europeans knew that that's how we go down. That's what we do. That's our thing.
Hmm.
So in order to discredit us, they will use the hierarchy of the written word. But you can write shit down and still write shit down. Like,
Yeah,
you've written a lie.
right.
It doesn't make the fact that just because you've written it down doesn't make it the truth. You've still
Right,
written down a lie.
right.
So I just think that idea that the written is more superior. It's the same idea of the idea that Latin is a classic language.
Hmm.
It's a dead
Hmm.
language, but it's still a classic language. But everyone else's language is broken English and whatever. It's just they're all ideas rooted in white supremacy.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, so I think this idea that the written is more important than the spoken, again, is a narrative centered on European traditions. And
Hmm.
if you go to the African worldview, again, then the orality is more important.
Hmm.
And I think the beauty of orality being more important is that it centers the idea of community being together. Because
Yeah.
in order for you to hear the history, you have to be in community. You can't hear it unless you're in community,
Hmm. Hmm.
and you can't learn it unless you're in community as well.
That's a
I think.
great point. You can't hear it or learn it unless you're in community with this.
Mhm,
That's
mhm,
a great
mhm.
point.
So
It's not
that
for
those are all
everybody. It's a form of
it's not for
gatekeeping to it
everybody.
as well.
It is.
Right.
It
Hmm.
is, and only those that need to hear will hear, right?
Hmm.
And also these things are also done in families. So there's the people that have the know-how and the community oral history gathering and data practices are in one community form.
Mm.
And another thing I wanted to also bring into the space as well is that this idea of communication and language. Hold on, my battery's low.
Hmm.
Let me put my charger in.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, one thing I really wanted to bring to this space today actually was actually, let me just listen before. You might have to edit this part out, sorry.
Hmm.
But charging, yeah, okay. Yeah, one thing I really wanted to bring to space today as well is like our ideas about what constitutes a language.
Hmm.
Everyone needs to be, because like there's a group of African peoples, I think the southern, I think it's in the XR. I don't know if my English tongue is not going to allow me to pronounce it, but I think it's the XOI language,
Okay.
where they the click language, where they use
Yeah.
clicks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like
Hmm.
even clicking is a valid way of understanding
Absolutely.
the
Hmm.
world around us. And also like gestures. So one thing I've been learning as well as part of my research is that like for Black people, gesturing has always been a very important communication
Right.
practice.
Right.
And so that because of that, you had traditional like Yoruba, Tui, other West African language that had gestures within it. And also what you have is that in that Yoruba community, even like in ancient times, because the Yoruba language had a lot of gesturing,
Hmm.
children that were born into harem families were able to communicate with their families because Yoruba had gesturing within it.
Mm. Mm. Hmm.
And then you see the same thing, like when people say that African Americans are, they find it a lot more easier to learn and to speak or to sign, because AAVE retains a lot of those gestures, talking with your hands and using your eyes and your face.
Hmm.
Like we communicate with a whole range of
Right.
things,
Right.
right? Tone as well, because the Yoruba is tonal. The tone in which you say means a lot.
Lot. It means so
No,
much. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
conveys so
Hmm.
much. So I think that those concepts as well, sometimes when we talk about language, we leave out those other very ancestrally Black things to do, because Europeans don't like it when you talk with your hands. Don't talk with your
Mm-mm.
hands.
Hmm.
They don't like any of that. They don't
Mm-mm.
like that.
Hmm.
But it's seen as unprofessional sometimes. But
Hmm.
in African worldviews, actually they hold gesturing as a form of communication is very valid, and it does convey a lot of meaning. Which is what you see in cutting your eyes, running your eyes, it means so much. It conveys, it's in your teeth, it
Yeah.
conveys something. So I think that those forms of communication also need to be brought into the spaces when we're talking about orality, we're talking about different expressions and ways that we speak, like signing and gesturing is very important to Black people as well.
Yeah, like you mentioned, gesturing, tone, it can change the whole meaning of a sentence. You know what I mean? Like one thing about gesturing too, or not, well, this is not necessarily gesturing, but I think they might have a relationship, is that a lot of people may not understand that for the hearing impaired, there's even a Black way to sign.
Yes, there is black BSL and AABE as well.
Yep.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Like, and that was developed separately actually from whites.
Wow.
So I think that it's particularly important that we acknowledge that, like that there's a lot of ableism comes into play, but like signing and being able to sign and gesture is a way to communicate. It's a valid way of communication. It's a valid language.
Absolutely.
Our ancestors knew that because they incorporated that into the way that they gestured and spoke African languages as well, which always helped the hearing communities that was in community with them, because the people that are non-hearing, the non-hearing communities, people that are non-hearing, they need gesturing. So then the non-hearing people are not new to society. They've always been with us.
Right.
So our communities have always created space for them as well. And that is rarely acknowledged when talking about sign language and signing as well.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So can you talk about BLAM UK and just some of the work that you've been doing, and also because you were able to did you go to the UN like the permanent forum on people of African descent? I want to say I read that.
I went 3 times. I'm a UN
that's right.
fellow for that. I'm also a UN fellow for the decade as well. So
Wow.
decade for people of African descent. So I've been around that space quite a bit because of that work.
Well, first off, thank you for your work. You know what I'm saying? It's very important, and we appreciate you very, very much. And but if you can talk to the people about that some, I want them to know just some of the work you've been putting in, because you're a very valuable piece in our Pan-African puzzle.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so BLAM stands for Black Learning Achievement Mental Health. It's a community-based non-profit that I set up 9 years ago. And it was really coming out of that tradition of Marcus Garvey tradition of do for self, this idea of know ourselves can free our minds, and these ideas of like that Converse and people like Dr. Howe and others more that would say, we must organize our communities, and we as community members and people in the community have every right to do so. So, there's a rich history in the UK of the Black supplementary school, which is when the school system was failing Black children and having a lot of very racist practice that was excluding Black children from mainstream education. And what they did is that they made counter schools that were community-based, that were teaching Black history on Saturdays, which would help the racial esteem of Black children living in a very racist country. So that concept was something that was very important to me, and I made sure that I was able to carry that on, that legacy on, by thinking about, okay, Black history is still something that's not taught in schools. I remember the Black history that we did learn as well, it was only American history. So we learned about Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King, but we never learned about Dr. Sal Olive Morris.
Yeah.
So we didn't learn about British people. We didn't learn about any Caribbean people or any African people either, despite us being children that are descended of those two communities. So again, like the history was very limited and very limiting. And I wanted to do more to shout for Black children. So BLAM really became a site of resistance. BLAM actually also started because of 2016 BLM uprisings as well. And it started off actually as a protest group. So I had a static protest in Brixton as well. And I said, I wanted to mobilize the community beyond protest. And I think Kwame Ture talks about this a lot, like, it's very easy to mobilize the community to go to a protest, and they'd be like, "Oh, I was there.
Yeah.
I was at that march. I was at that." Don't get me wrong. I love protesting as a radical act of resistance, and actually as a radical act of saying to the government, "We're taking over the streets," and actually like, we don't believe in this policy is right, and it's a direct of calling out things. So I will never ever critique protest as a legitimate form of organizing, but what often happens is that it stops at protesting. There's no further community-based organizing beyond the protest, and that can't be the case. It has to be protest in constant communication and dialogue with mobilizing on the ground. And I wanted BLAM to be a site where I could constantly have community space that we mobilized and talk on a lot of issues affecting Black children and Black people in general. So we started off with the school-based projects and community-based projects on Black history in schools. We also started a advocacy campaign as well, and the campaign was because Black children are being excluded from school at a higher rate than most children, apart from the Irish and the Gypsies, and I think the Irish Gypsy children as well. So like they are excluded on a particularly higher rate, and they're the only group that is excluded on a higher rate than Black children, just by a slim margin. But in terms of these are historic groups that have faced marginalization, the Black child Caribbean children are 3 times likely to excluded from schools. So what we do is we do provide Black specific, we're the country's only Black specific school exclusion service. And in our legal arguments, we will raise points on anti-Blackness. We will raise points on racism. I mean, we had a case where a Black child was excluded for staring at a white child.
What?
We said this is some Jim Crow era.
Right.
Control of your eyes.
Right.
You
right.
don't have freedom to even look anywhere.
Right.
So we argued on the grounds of, this is extremely anti-Black, and we brought in all of the historic violence of, Black people having to look down when it's white people because of give you the same gaze. If you look into your eyes, it's just rude.
Yeah.
And you're bringing that to this now? No way.
No way.
We finished with them. They reinstated that child back with immediate effect.
Good shit. Good shit. Yeah.
So we do a lot of work like that, really dealing with a lot of anti-Black violence that children are facing in the school space. And then we also were doing a lot of work on like mental health, looking at how racism is a form of mental unwellness for Black people, and it affects our racial wellness, and it also affects our wellness as people.
Yeah.
And working towards how we can be racially well again, despite living under constant threats from white supremacy. So we were providing online free group racial therapy, because I always say that we're collectively oppressed, so we can only be collectively liberated.
I love that.
Thank you.
Because here in America it's so individualized, right? Like therapy is teaching you how to cope with capitalism and imperialism and going about your day, right? Is okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what's happening. Yeah, I feel you on that, and which is why we made the service free, and why we made the service group based as well, because of those 2 points that you've mentioned. I think that was very important to us. I just want to show you one more thing. I don't have the non-hardback copy at the moment. I've only the hardback copy
because I already put the linguistic justice book in my cart. So you know what I'm saying.
You gotta add this too.
Okay, all right.
I mean, it was made with teachers in mind. The actual paperback copy is really pretty because it's got like a puzzle of different African prints. But this was called Global Black Narratives for the Classroom. This is the Britain and Europe edition, but we also have volume 1, which is Africa, the Caribbean, and the Americas as well, and then it also includes particularly Latin America, because they often get left out of
right.
of Blackness, and they have the largest amount of Black people out of Africa is in the field, so it's really important to include the field. So yeah, this is it. It's made with teachers in mind.
Oh wow!
But it can be done with by parents, and also by I would also say by even eager adults that want to learn more about Black history, because the way that we've done it is we've done a section that has specific stuff. It's like one that's looked at local history, so it's like a plenary. It looks at a teacher guide. It's like a whole historical element that we've done just for teachers to be able to feel confident teach lessons. And then we've got how they can teach lessons, and then we've got worksheets, which I guess you could use it as your work to see if you've really taken in the content that we've
I'm definitely gonna cop that. I'm also gonna put the link in the description so everybody who is interested can get that.
And this was done by 20 Black women over a 3-year period.
Wow.
As well.
I gotta get it for that just alone.
just to know,
No, you
right?
know what I'm saying?
It's a very comprehensive book, so I think anyone interested in learning and a very easy access learning to all parts of global Black history. We've got history, we've got drama, we've got poetry, we've got linguistics in there, we've got so many things to name a few. But yeah, so we've got that as well that we created as a site of resistance, because we say that we may not be able to be in every single school in the UK. There's 20,000 primary schools. We can't school, but this book can be.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
We can travel further than we can, which is why we dedicated the time to creating the book.
Absolutely. Make sure y'all get that book. Links in the description. For real, Ife, I appreciate you not just for coming through, but just everything that you're doing. The work, the scholarship is
Thank
all
you.
extremely important. So, I can't
Sorry,
wait.
I didn't talk about the UN decade thing.
Oh
Maybe
yeah. No, I forgot.
you know what? There's
Yeah,
so much stuff I just
yeah.
forget.
No. Yeah, let us know. Let us know.
Before you round off, let me just talk about that. So there's currently a fellowship for anybody who's interested in global Black organizing and organizing people of African descent. There's a fellowship called the United Nations Fellowship for People of African Descent, because we're currently in a decade, second decade for people of African descent, and the international decade is looking at reparations, looking at recognition, and looking at justice for Black people globally, because that decade links at what is the onslaught of anti-Blackness globally is the transatlantic slave trade. That's the beginning of the ongoing anti-Blackness that Black people are still going through. They acknowledge that, and they try to think about how we can work towards a more liberated world for people of African descent globally. So you get to meet Black people from all around the world. So, we had a fellow from Jamaica, from Brazil, from Panama, from France, from all over the world. We come together talking about the work that we do towards eradicating anti-Blackness and making a world for Black joy, for people of African descent. And we learn from each other, but also learn different human rights frameworks that we can use to support our advocacy work as well. And as part of the advocacy work and part of the decade, they created a international UN permanent forum for people of African descent, so international permanent forum for people of African descent. And the forum is really a space where Black people come together around the world. I mean, it's probably one of the grandest and biggest times I've been able to meet Black people from everywhere in the world in one space.
Yeah.
And it really reminded me of the work of Malcolm X, saying that, we can take our case to the UN and say it's the human rights violation, racism that's going on. And I think that work is kind of sitting that legacy of, there's a whole campaign done by Black Americans, I think in the 1950s or 40s, called We Charge Genocide.
Yeah, We Charge Genocide. Yep.
And that was to the UN. Yeah. So there's a long history of taking up petition to the UN and saying on a global stage, this is a human rights violation, that's what's going on to Black people. And that forum sits on that work. So if you ever have the chance to go, they have the forum either in Geneva or in New York. I believe Geneva one is better, but hey.
Yeah.
They have you gone yourself, Rakeem?
No, I haven't, but I would love to.
You gotta go.
Yeah, I would love to.
Powerful space, and they also do some scholarships as well for people that apply. If you can't afford to, the UN actually does some scholarships that can fund people from African countries and across diaspora that cannot afford to go. So do look into that as well. But yeah, it's a very powerful space. I think if you're doing this work, it's good to be able to organize and to connect. I think even though we are the most connected that we've ever been as Black people, we haven't been able to mobilize as much as Marcus Garvey. He in the 1920s made still to today the world's largest organization. And I think that is an indictment on us to do better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Organize more widely.
He did this without the internet. I mean, just
without the internet.
So,
and he was so much of a threat that the US government had to deport him and make false charges against him. So there's a really good documentary on Amazon called Messiah, which talks about the history of Marcus Garvey. If you can watch that,
I think I've seen it.
Brilliant film. It's done by a Black guy as well in America. If you can watch it, please do. But we've got to be doing more as a people to connect with each other and to work towards global liberation. So do try and look into the decade and incorporate it into your work as well. And one last thing before I leave, I am launching the world's first Afro Creole Languages Week. I've got my shirt here. It's going to be the 1st to the 8th of September.
September 1st to the 8th?
To the 8th. Okay. Yeah, it's going to be the world's first one, and it's going to be a space where we can celebrate Afro Creole languages, languages that people created globally, and looking at that heritage and that history. And we want to be celebrating every single part of the world. So the website is coming soon, but check out. If you just check out any of my social media accounts, you'll be able to find out more about the Afro Creole Languages Week. And we are on Instagram as well, at least Afro Creole Languages. You can find us on Instagram.
That's going to be dope. I'll definitely be celebrating. Thank you again, because all of this stuff is important. Like, I think you in this conversation, you did a amazing job of highlighting to the people the importance of language, what role it plays in our liberation and our fight for justice, and how it can be weaponized. Well, how the dominant languages can be weaponized against us, right? And so absolutely, I'm all in celebrating Afro Creole Language Week, September 1st through the 8th. And make sure y'all follow Ife Thompson on Twitter, IG, and all of the socials. She'll keep you updated with what she has going on. Again, obviously, she's an amazing person. And so, yeah, make sure y'all follow her so y'all can stay in the loop.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
I'm going to take a picture as well on my phone.
For sure.
Well, I'm going to do it